Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, GCP, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
Ryan,
and Matthew.
Episode 238, recorded for the week of November 30th, 2023. AWS joins the Q Continuum. Happy Reinvent, Matt, Ryan, and Jonathan. How's it going?
Going good.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm tired of looking at show notes for AWS because it's been a nonstop for about 3 full days. Well, actually, 3.5 if you count Monday night as well. So there's a lot to cover today, but lots of presents, lots of goodies, lots of things to enjoy.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's really hard to keep up on everything that's happening while having a day job that's not in that cloud, and then trying to watch all this at night and do everything else.
Yeah, I mean, I had to block out time on my calendar to do it. So I would highly recommend that for future. I've already blocked out Google Next. I already blocked out so I could be prepared for that because otherwise a bunch of stuff will get scheduled, I'm sure, by April that I'll be cranky about. Well, should we get into it then? Because there's a lot to cover this evening.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so my favorite time is pre-invent. Pre-invent is when all the product managers who hope to make main stage, hopes and dreams are dashed and destroyed. And their announcements get thrown to the AWS Twitter RSS feeds, and people maybe see them or maybe don't see them. But I see all of them because that's how I like to live there. And the thing that I noticed the most about the pre-invent stuff this year, a lot of this would have been main stage like 5 or 6 years ago. It's just amazing how far we've kind of come in overall, like what they're releasing innovation-wise and things that they don't think are worthy of being in a keynote. Because like this first one, we'll talk about introducing an Amazon CloudFront key value store, a low latency data store for CloudFront functions. That's pretty damn cool. And it didn't even make main stage. And so, basically this is CloudFront functions. You can now perform latency sensitive customizations for millions of requests per second. For example, you can send a CloudFront function to modify headers, normalize cache keys, rewrite URLs, or authorize requests. And now we're adding the ability to do key value store to give you a secure global low latency key value data store that allows read access from within CloudFront functions, enabling advanced customizable logic at the CloudFront edge location. So previously you'd had to point this at a configuration detail somewhere else and pull it in. So now it can get directly from the cloud key value store. There are some interesting limitations on this one. There are some sharp edges, like 5 megabytes is the overall size of the entire repository for key values. So you're not going to be putting a lot of stuff into it, but the stuff you really need to be fast and low latency can get dumped right into CloudFront directly. I do expect we'll see service limits in the future, but good to see this one.
Yeah, I found this being announced pre-event to be kind of shocking because this is one of those announcements where, you could re-architect your entire app for better performance using this type of solution. And it's, not even big enough for the main stage. But there's huge potential in doing that edge transformation so that you can directly serve at the edge at much lower latency. So it's awesome.
I was thinking it would be used for things like, app sets, user-specific app settings and things like that, things which need to load fast. And in the day we're in, where people just, if a page doesn't load within about 300 milliseconds, they'll click off or hit refresh or something else. You've got to be super fast with loading all those things. So.
Yeah, there's a bunch of things you could do. You could do localization tricks by, changing origin and doing other things. Like there's just all kinds of really cool stuff that you can do.
Yeah,
well, and it's nice competitive to Cloudflare, which kind of has offered something similar to this for a while. So, it's nice to see it now being native in CloudFront. Because I know some people who have moved to Cloudflare specifically for this feature and capability where they needed ultra low latency ability to modify header data. And they've been doing that with Cloudflare. So, great that Amazon has it now, so you don't have to naturally move all of your DNS infrastructure and CDN stuff to Cloudflare if you don't want to, although it's not a bad choice. But it is nice to see the feature parity. The other pre-invent one that jumped out at me was announcing AWS console to code preview to generate code for console actions. And this mostly jumps out to me because this is what Former 2 essentially does. So McKay got Sherlocked by Amazon this year. This isn't pretty, but basically allows you to use a generative AI capability that makes it simple, fast, and cost-effective to move from prototyping in the AWS Management Console to deploying production code for your workloads. And this generates that code in the CDK, and CloudFormation. No Terraform yet, but maybe that'll come soon. So there's still some value in Terraformer too. But if you want to write CloudFormation or CDK code, this thing will help you do it. based off your actual infrastructure.
I mean, it's a great way to get started, right? Like, okay, I've gone in, I clicked through these things, it generates something. I'm sure it's not going to be the most robust and awesome code, but like, it's a great way for a small company or, anyone just to say like, okay, cool. Now I at least have this templatized that I can, now go try to make tweaks without breaking everything.
I think it's great for learning too, actually. I mean, I use this in the Google console all the time because I'll try and put together a command line to do something and it fails miserably. And so I go and do it in the console and it generates the command line code and you think, I missed that thing, which isn't documented anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Or poorly documented as
or poorly documented. Yeah. So I think it's a good learning tool too.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I taught a team of developers how to use codified monitoring dashboards by using, Form or 2 at the time, and being able to have that sort of UI workflow and talk over that, but then have this sort of code artifact that you can then go and dissect really is a powerful way to sort of understand how the actions translate into API calls on the back end.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, you could think of it that way, or you could think of it as really just turning the console into UI to generate code.
Yeah.
It's just a very, very convenient way to generate code without having to troll the docs.
I mean, if we're going to get no-code, low-code solutions that are just dragging boxes around, why can't I do that with a console?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't hate it. I think, and like I said, I think it doesn't scale long-term, but it's a great way to get started. And a lot of people just need to get started sometimes.
I mean, Azure has this kind of built in where you can just essentially, for lack of a better example, right-click and say, give me this in CloudFormation or in Azure ARM or Bicep, if you're talking Azure terms, and you can at least see it. So when I had my team starting to learn Terraform, they could at least see what the settings were to understand, because the Terraform settings for Azure, the documentation is nowhere near as robust as AWS's.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know about how great Amazon's is either, but here we are.
Well, I think it's better than GCP and Azure, which is not great. Yeah,
bad statement in general. All right. Well, there was a bunch of storage stuff that was pre-announced. Mostly if you're looking for scalability in ONTAP, FSX for NetApp ONTAP, or looking for on-demand data replication in FSX for OpenZFS, check our show notes for those. Lots of scale-out opportunities, shared VPC stuff, and combined volume management. Good to see. If you're worried about basically ransomware, Amazon EBS Snapshot is now available to you out there to help you, a snapshot lock, to basically lock your snapshots so they can't be messed with, which is great for ransomware needs. And then there's
for compliance too.
Compliance will help you too,
in
that scenario. But I'm pretty sure they built this for ransomware, because when we talked about building this for compliance 5 years ago, they were like, yeah, we don't really think that's a thing. Ransomware, they're like, yeah, it's a thing. Yeah. And then there's a couple of Amazon AWS backup things that both Ryan and Matt were super excited about. So first up was an automatic restore testing and validation that is now available to you in AWS backup. This basically allows you to automatically schedule your restore testing, which is a new capability in AWS backup. It allows you to perform restore testing of your AWS resources across storage, compute, and databases. With the feature, you can automate the entire restore testing process and avoid surprises later by determining now whether you can successfully recover using your backup in the event of data loss, such as ransomware. As an additional option to demonstrate compliance with your organizational and regulatory data governance requirements, you can also use the restored job results. Best time to find out that your backups don't work is when you don't need them. Mm-hmm. So not when you do need them and they're not viable. So definitely nice to have an automated way to do this. You could do this before with a lot of your own heavy lifting and toil. So good to see.
Yeah, I mean, that's the main reason why I flagged this, is that I've just done so many tabletop exercises and so many, compliance evidence sessions where you're screen sharing this restore process, and it's just so painful. And so I love the fact that this can be automated and sort of just, completed. And it's at that point, it's just sort of monitored. Like you have this part of your release process where you run through this process, and it's a pass fail on your application, and you can respond to it there. And I think that's a fantastic way of sort of signifying your compliance and your ability to be able to survive a disaster or unintentional failure.
Another one Matt was interested in is you can now automatically handle your snapshot archives with AWS Backup. Previously, it was only available to you in the EC2 console or via Amazon Data Lifecycle Manager. This gives you the ability to transition your infrequently accessed Amazon EBS snapshots to a low-cost archive, long-term storage of your rarely accessed snapshots that do not need frequent or fast retrieval. So yes, again, you want to save money, but you want to keep those snapshots for multiple years. This is a great option for you. Apparently you request this as a feature, Matt?
Yeah, I think it was right when they implemented they had it for EFS to go down to archive and a few other things. So it was something that I requested for, and we tried to set up when AWS Backup first came out. And I think it was like my PFR about 2 years ago for a client. So as soon as I saw this release, I pinged my old client, was like, hey, go do this. This will save you lots of money. Hi, by the way, it's been a while.
I'm sure they appreciated hearing from you about their feature requests from multiple years ago.
I'm surprised that they don't use like the same language. Glacier is what people recognize as being, the deep, cold, cheap storage. I kind of wonder why they don't brand it as, like a Glacier archive.
Oh, because then they'll get stuck with the S3 API. No. You don't want that.
That's a good point, actually. All right. Well, moving on to serverless and step functions. External endpoints and testing for task states now is available to you in step functions. And then this one, which would have been main stage 2 years ago, AWS Lambda functions now scale 12 times faster when handling high volume requests. This basically is invoked when Lambda function now scales by 1,000 concurrent executions every 10 seconds until the aggregate concurrency across all function reaches the account's concurrency limit. In addition, each function within an account now scales independently from each other, no matter how the functions are invoked. And these improvements come at no additional cost to you other than the invocation itself. And you don't need to do any configuration to your existing functions. So I guess we just moved on past cold starts, and cold starts were no longer a thing anybody cares about. I'm not sure, but again, this is a nice one to see as well.
I mean, cold start was such a problem for so long, but there's been 5 or 6 different enhancements that I can think of to address that performance issue specifically, where, I think that over time, they've iterated over the runtime underneath the functions to really just abstract it away, which is awesome.
For me, I mean, scaling up 12 times faster is great, but I think there's probably very few customers that would really be impacted by not being able to scale up faster than 3,000 every minute, or whatever it was. I think for me, what stood out as being an important change was isolating the functions in their own scaling patterns, so that the 3,000 per minute, whatever it was, is not across all the functions you have deployed in an account. It's per function. Otherwise, you end up with weird things where one service is particularly busy and it cripples another service, and you have very low visibility into why that was actually happening or anything else. And now it won't. So awesome.
Yeah, I agree that that's the more important part of the announcement, but I also feel like the ability to scale and just sort of the sort of pitfalls around Lambda have steered people away from using Lambda as part of their architecture, where yes, I realize it's not as cool, but it at least shuts those people up.
It does. And I mean, I've built things before that would pre-warm Lambda basically just by making fake requests just to spin them all up so that we wouldn't suffer from the loss of throughput when there's a big influx of traffic. So that also goes away, I would think, with this kind of change. So it's awesome.
Yeah.
Didn't still have something about where it keeps the bare minimum of it running? There's you pay obviously for it, but it keeps X number running. I don't remember what it's called right now, but
the warm, Lambda warm functionality that you basically keep a certain set of them warm all the time, and you can scale that up dynamically. I was actually surprised that didn't get an AI update this time. I sort of expected it to maybe get an AI improvement to automatically figure out those warm pools.
I mean, gets into are we rebranding machine learning into AI, because they've been using machine learning on the back end for years to optimize on their side. It's just not a feature they sell to us. That's when it's AI, is when they want to make a buck.
You should tweet that. That's very good. The difference between ML and AI is
coming soon to my Twitter account.
The FinOps Foundation got a new cost optimization hub, which is a new AWS billing and cost management feature that makes it easy for you to identify, filter, aggregate, and quantify savings for AWS cost optimization recommendations. You can interactively query cost optimization recommendations such as idle resource detection, resource right-sizing, and purchasing options across multiple AWS regions and AWS accounts in your organizations. without any data aggregation and processing required. You can find out how much you save if you implement those recommendations and easily compare and prioritize recommendations by the savings itself. And I thought this was sort of weird because I'm like, they've been doing a lot of investments in this space, but apparently Andy Jassy in his 2022 letter to shareholders said, we're trying to build customer relationships and a business that outlasts all of us. And as a result, our AWS sales and support teams are spending much of their time helping customers optimize their AWS spend so they can better weather this uncertain economy. And this is basically someone who had a project asked from Andy Jassy who had to get those shipped or probably wouldn't have a job. So congratulations to that person for still having a job. Because Andy Jassy promised it and you delivered. Well done. But it is nice to see this because it is across account and cross region. You don't have to do a bunch of aggregation work with the existing tools did have to do. I was sort of hoping maybe something about focus would have come out for the FinOps Foundation, but that didn't happen at this conference. So it's a little too early. They just signed that partnership. But unless they've been working on it in the background for a while.
It kind of reminds me of when my son comes and asks me, he's like, can I have some credits on Roblox? There's this deal here. You can get 1,000 for this much money or 5,000 for this much money. Which one do you pick? I'm like, I have to have this conversation with him about, well, just because somebody gives you two options, it doesn't mean you have to pick either of them. And I think some of the cost optimizations that are suggested, that they are in themselves, sure, they're going to save you some money, but they're missing the big picture in that, well, maybe you shouldn't be using this service at all. Maybe there's a much better way to do it. So I think, yes, it will save some money. It's not the whole story.
Until it's AI powered that actually turns that stuff off, I'm not interested.
Yeah, I've been really trying to explain to my kids why they can't spend $20 on a Fortnite skin.
Yeah,
and I'm like, you want to spend $20 real for a virtual skin for a character that's virtual that you're going to play with for a month, and then you're going to be tired of. I'm like, that's not good investment.
Yep.
In an asset that's tangible.
Yeah, I have the same thing with Minecraft. I'm like, you want to buy this skin? You can't even see the skin. You play from a first-person view. Like, he's like, yeah, but I look cool. I'm like, okay, I know ultimately what we're paying for here.
Yeah, the age old, but I look cool. Like nothing's changed. We just did it in physical form. Yeah.
All right. Well, then they had AI ML stuff that was pre-invent. I'm shocked. I assumed all of it was going to end up in the main keynote.
Yeah.
No matter how silly it was.
Yeah.
But the first one up was the Amazon Code Whisperer offers you a new AI-powered code remediation, infrastructure as code support, and integration with Visual Studio directly. AI-powered code remediation is the name of the game here, and it's all about giving you security scanning for Java, Python, JavaScript, and now available for TypeScript, C#, AWS CloudFormation, CDK, and HashiCorp Terraform HCL code, all available too. So now it can help you fix your Terraform, which I kind of like. Mm-hmm. Amazon Code Analysis support for infrastructure code, as mentioned, and then also for integration into the real Visual Studio 2022, not the Visual Studio Code version. So if you had to carry around the boat anchor Visual Studio, you now have that support as well, which is a lot of Windows developers out there. So that is great for you as well. There is a new CLI capability that came out in 11.20 as well. It's mentioned in the article for how to use Code Whisperer for the command line. If you want to use it for things like CLIs like Git, NPM, AWS CLI, and Docker, it can help make recommendations directly in the CLI, which I also will be leveraging. So thank you.
I missed that announcement, so that's awesome. Yeah, I really like that the infrastructure as code support for this. I've been using Code Whisperer in my personal projects for coding things to make up for my shoddy code ability. And now it can make up for my shoddy infrastructure as code ability, which I really enjoy. So this is awesome.
Well, the next one up is you can now use natural language to query your Amazon CloudWatch logs and metrics in preview. So this is another AI ML feature. You can generate new queries from a description or a question to help you get started easily, like tell me the duration of the 10 slowest invocations of my code, and it'll give you outputs of that directly from the logs. And you can tell it to only show you timestamps and latency, count the number of error messages, all kinds of great opportunities here. This is very nice because the regex format that they used for CloudWatch in the past has been kind of awful. So I will be using this one as well because I can definitely ask it how many, my question in natural language, not in their specific syntax for regex.
That's why I'm so excited for this is, trying to figure out the exact syntax of CloudWatch log insights and, all these other things, is always a pain in the neck. And you're like, okay, what are the fields called and everything else to make sure I get it right. And okay, exactly all the things here, at least, you can just tell it what you want and gets me 80% of the way there. I can tweak from there to get me what I want and having that in CloudWatch logs is great because you forget that developer that put something in debug mode and leaves it on into production. And now you're like searching for the needle in the haystack, which definitely has never happened to any one of us, I'm sure.
I was going to say, I spent a year of my life basically looking at log ingestion through Logstash comments in CloudWatch that, oh my God, if this would have existed then, I would have been such... I probably would live longer. It probably would have had an effect on my overall lifespan if this existed just a few years earlier. So I'm excited about this one.
Well, first one, admire Matt for saying pain in the neck, because that's not the word I would have used.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be proper. Yeah. I have a young child that just starts repeating my words now.
So the rating and proper, no NSFW tags.
But then secondly, I love it because it just abstracts away so much complexity, which was really hard to understand. Even if you read and understand the docs, it was very hard to understand, especially when you're looking at things where the measurement interval is not consistent between different items. Like, well, this one's every minute, but this one's every 5 seconds. And so integrating that data and then getting sort of sensible, understandable numbers that are comparable with each other out has been super difficult. Mm-hmm. Even for people who know what they're doing. So this is fantastic. But it's never really been Justin's problem, though, because he would just ask somebody else in natural language to get the data for him, and he'd make it somebody else's issue. So it's certainly not a tool for the executives.
I'm very happy that they've automated this part of my job away, because now we just point Justin at the console and be like, no, you go.
Do you trust Justin in there?
And I was struggling, I would just ask you guys. So that's called management, my friends.
Yeah.
I'm impressed you gave Justin access to the console. Let's start with that.
It's hopeful. We were like, please, just self-service.
I did for a long time. And then
you did, I know.
Moved up for a long and then for all of you hackathon participants who love to get into hackathons and build shitty prototypes, there was an announcement that shows that those things can have value, and that is Amazon Party Rock. Apparently was a project coming out of an Amazon internal hackathon where they basically created a AI machine that runs on top of Bedrock and allows you to basically give an opinionated perspective. So let's say you wanted to create an AI bot that would answer questions about tickets or about rocks or about planets, whatever. You would give it that little bit of a hint, and then you publish it as an application, and then you could go ask the specific URL Party Rock site what planet is closest to Earth, and it will tell you that because it has this opinionated piece of it. Very simple, very lightweight. I basically did this exact same thing when we first talked about Bedrock multiple weeks ago, but this is basically a web interface with it, and the web interface is horrible. The worst UI I've ever seen in my entire life. But they said, this is a great hackathon project that people can get value out of right away, and they just shipped it as is. And so there's hope for all of you hackathoners out there who are hoping to get your prototypes out in the world to be seen and loved. And this is a good toy just to go play with. So enjoy.
It's so much redemption. They took the visual aesthetic of 1980s Macintosh OS and they put it into a modern web application. And I just feel like every one of my BS little things that I've done is just completely validated now. And it didn't matter that it was terrible and hacky. Thank you, Amazon.
I am right there with you.
I feel like that's everything I've done.
Yeah, suppose you all can work at Amazon. So
yeah. I joked about it coming in second or third in the hackathon, but I'm pretty sure the Q came in first. But we'll talk about that later.
All right, we're still in pre-event territory, guys.
I know we haven't even gotten to the show yet.
Oh god!
So observability updates. A couple of things around CloudWatch logs, Prometheus clusters, then a couple we'll talk about here real quickly. CloudWatch logs now offers automated pattern analytics and anomaly detection. So if you'd like to know when your developer decides to ship 100 million logs to your application after the latest update, it'll now tell you that, hey, this app just did that, which is pretty great. And then the other one we'll talk about briefly here is Amazon CloudWatch to consolidate hybrid, multi-cloud, and on-premise metrics, which basically is CloudWatch has gone multi-cloud. And so now you can basically use it to handle all of your on-premise or GCP and Azure workloads, give you a mediocre observability experience on all the cloud platforms that's unified and the same. So that is an option now for you using the Put Metrics Data API, which I do recommend you heavily look at the pricing for that.
Yes.
But if you would really like to make CloudWatch your system of record for all things observability, you can now do that at your CFO's anger.
Yeah.
I used to think 50 cents for a custom metric was a lot of money until we ran a massive logging platform at scale. And then I realized, actually, that's probably what it cost them.
Yeah.
They're probably not making any money on that at all.
Nope. Yeah, it changed my mind as well.
Yeah. That was an interesting time of life.
Containers got a bit of a short shrift this year in general. We'll talk about a couple of things that are main stage stuff for this, but pre-invent, nothing really exciting here other than Amazon EKS Pod identifies, simplifies IAM permissions for apps, which is nice. Anything to make that better is good. ECS and Fargate got you new runtime security threats and guard duty, and that's pretty nice as well. In general security, this is where they really killed Ryan.
Yeah.
IAM Access Analyzer updates find unused access check policies before deployment, introducing the Access Analyzer custom policy checker. And this is now basically takes out one of Ryan's predictions, all before reInvent. So I'm sorry about that, Ryan, but you were in pre-invent territory. So some of us weren't even in pre-invent territory with our predictions. So that's a win.
Yeah, I do count this as a win, right? Because usually my predictions are so far off base. They not only do they not make main stage, they don't make any sense to anyone else besides me. And so at least I feel like I'm coming to terms with my understanding of cloud and how cloud is used by normal people. Pretty happy about that.
Yeah. You just have to think bigger is the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
You're too small. You got all pre-invent.
Yeah. But a couple other things came out of security. Mutual authentication for ALB load balancer is now there for you to do certificate-based client identities. This has been a long road coming probably for the last 2 years. We've been seeing the building blocks of this kind of come out, and we've been talking about it here on the podcast. It's now officially there. You can now use mutual TLS. God rest your souls.
Yeah, as long as you abstract all of the certificate management and all of that pattern to someone else, I am totally fine with mutual TLS in your workflow. I love it. Like, so this is exactly why you use something like Amazon. This is the cruft and the toil I don't want to do. And yeah, check box, please.
Yeah. And then Amazon Inspector agentless vulnerability assessments for EC2 is now in preview for this as well. This is just the same inspector you've known and maybe hated, but in agentless format, which I prefer because I hate agents on my servers. So that's nice to see just that come out there. We'll mention that quick. And then the other Ryan killer, AWS Control Tower adds new controls to help customers meet digital sovereignty requirements. Wah, wah, wah.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's that was a bummer for you. I saw both of us come out on the weekend before reInvent, and I was messaging outside. I was like, I'm sorry, man. You just got killed on 2 of these.
Yeah. No, it's, again, still counted as a win. So, because these are real problems that people have. And so they're now solutions and things that people on AWS don't have to deal with. So it's awesome.
Yeah. And then there's some interesting miscellaneous stuff here we can talk about real quickly. New high memory instances. If you need those, go check those out. The U7i. Those are Intel based. There's a new Amazon Workspaces Thin client for those of you who are forcing all of your users to use Thin clients. There's now a small little desktop device that you can plug into a keyboard, mouse, and monitor that will stream directly your Amazon Workspaces to your desktop experience without you having to buy a Chromebook or any of the other cheap Windows options to make this work. So that's available.
I thought it was the Fire TV. I thought it was like legitimately the Fire TV that they just repurposed.
I mean, it's probably related on the hardware side to each other, but they are different.
Oh yeah, because it looks like the like high end, or what was years
Cube.
ago the high end, the Fire Cube. In the picture. So I just made that assumption.
No, I think it is. I think they repurposed it. Yeah,
there's something to that. I remember reading about it. I can't remember now and all the noise that's happened since, but you didn't make that up.
Okay, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if I did.
Yeah, I know.
I'm like looking at the picture. I'm like, it looks like the Fire Cube.
Yeah, it does look like the Fire Cube, but it doesn't mention Fire anywhere in the article. But, yeah.
I don't think it's this this release or this announcement, but there was a similar one. I can't remember if it was Workspaces or AppStream, but there's definitely one we can find, and we'll provide an update later.
I actually think it's going to become more and more important, especially with things like the Okta support portal breach and things like this, where laptops are compromised because people do things on them. I think more and more now with workspaces being as good as they are and as fast as they are, that these thin clients will become the new corporate laptops.
It's possible,
especially with the next announcement.
Yeah.
There's now cross. I'm going to move on from that because we got to go.
I was just handing it right to Justin.
Yeah, there you go.
If you want those workspaces to be DR capable, though, you can now have cross-region data replication for your Amazon workspace. For whatever reason you would need that. And then you can now replace Stack Overflow with an Amazon inferior solution called Repost Private. Increase collaboration and securely share your cloud knowledge in a system that no one will like to use and no one wants to use. So similar to Q, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Use anomaly detection with AWS Glue to improve data quality. You can now check your AWS free tier usage programmatically with the new API, which Matt earlier said maybe they're going to charge for that. So that'd be funny to me. I hope they do. Just for the humor. And then the one that made me the most mad is now announcing Amazon RDS for DB2. And if for some reason this makes DB2 popular again, I will kill people.
I thought DB2 was finally dying.
I mean, it was, shocked. And then Amazon came and gave you an RDS service for it. So now you can run it in the cloud without having to re-platform your thing. So who knows? I don't know.
This is a mainframe.
Is this Adobe? This has to be Adobe.
Nah, this is
IBM.
This is this is mainframe apps that have been migrated to the cloud, and they need a managed solution for DB2. I mean, why they just don't get off DB2, I don't know. Like Postgres would be
DB2 is a pretty scalable database.
It is. It is very fast.
There's reasons to use it. I just don't want to ever support it again.
Yeah.
Literally in the posting, IBM Data Management Console or IBM DSM Top. So you can continue to use those.
Yeah, great. Appreciate it. You can also get throughput increases in dead letter queue redrive support for SQS FIFO queues. And the last one in the pre-invent, manage EDI at scale with Amazon B2B data interchange. And for those of you who know what EDI is, you're rejoicing. And for everyone else on my podcast host, they're going, what?
Dozens of us. Dozens.
That's basically the precursor to AS2, which you are familiar with a little bit, Ryan, from the SFTP perspective, because we talked about it. But EDI was the precursor to that, and we don't want to do anything with that, so move on.
Yeah,
that's it for pre-invent. That was a lot.
This is an entire conference before the conference.
Yeah. So this would have been the conference years ago. Like that would have made everyone happy. Like 8 years ago when it was in October, like. That would have been the entire conference. Everything would have been changed.
Yeah.
Right.
Everyone except the shareholders. Because right now, if you're not talking about AI, you're nobody.
Yeah.
You're right. So everything.
I don't think they talked about AI, did they?
I heard it mentioned a couple of times.
We learned earlier that if you want to make money on ML, you just call it
just call it AI. Yeah.
My takeaway from tonight, I was like, that's a brilliant quote. So retweet that when you do tweet that.
I'm gonna. And there'll be bumper stickers and merch.
Yeah, good call. That moves on to Monday Night Live with Peter DeSantis, who did a great job giving us pretty much a keynote for the geeks, in my opinion. Really walked us through some of the early S3, patterns again. Gave us a conversation on Redshift about how you kind of think about using AI and ML in some of those workloads, and then he announced a few things. But before I get to the announcements, what did you guys think of Peter? By the way, I did notice that all of the Amazon executives have been put on a diet plan. Peter looked great. Warner looked great. I'm gonna have to clean them on the diet plan situation. So I'm feeling a little.
I'm guessing
moment.
Yeah, there had to be like some sort of money pool on the line for the executives, right? Like it was way too consistent.
It's the Amazon pharmacy healthcare plan that they were above it and they were going to get kicked off of it.
That's right. That's exactly what it is. They're all going to the doctor now and being told you have high blood pressure and you have cholesterol problems and you need
all the snacks they're not eating in the office anymore.
Any other thoughts on the general Peter DeSantis talk before we get to the announcements you talked about?
I mean, I love the Monday Night Live announcement. It's always because of the topic is so near and dear, and just the scale of what they talk about. It's all problems that I'm dealing with in my day to day, but at a scale that I really can't imagine. Right. And I remember the first one where I didn't want to go, and it was before Peter DeSantis took it over, and they were talking about just the pipelines for fiber. And just the scale and the amount of traffic that they were talking about and the different things blew me away. And Peter's was no different. They're talking about, issues with Elasticache that are, like I talk about the logging platform from hell. Like this is all we did was manage hotspots and shards and manually just sort of handle a whole bunch of these problems. And, they're building these infrastructure services below these infrastructure services that are just so intelligent and so smart and so valuable for managing a managed service. And you can take that and you can use that logic and those patterns in your applications that are leveraging this infrastructure. I just think it's super cool, and I love geeking out about it.
Yeah. The whole concept of his talk was the journey to serverless and really managed services in general. And he, he talked, he had a nice dig at Azure at one point where he said, the only true isolation is hypervisor level isolation, which is a dig at Azure, of course. And then, but you basically started, talking about RDS and Aurora in particular, and, segmentation out of the compute from the storage. And then basically he's like, we provide that isolation through Nitro. But the problem with Nitro is that it's a hard set. So if you only need 2 CPUs and 8 gigs of memory, but the box is more than that, if you need to change that, you have to restart the server, which is not great for high availability or anything. So they actually create a hypervisor on top of the hypervisor that basically handles all of the sharding and all the allocation. And then they're massively sharding all these databases behind the scenes, so you don't even see all that sharding happening. So they can basically move these things around dynamically through hotspots and all the things as Ryan kind of just mentioned. So yeah, it was really impressive. And then, he basically announced Elasticache serverless for Redis and Memcached, which is basically the ability to have a serverless option that allows customers to create a cache under a minute and instantly scale capacity based on application traffic patterns. And the Elasticache service is compatible with 2 popular open source cache users, Redis and Memcached. And this allows you to basically set all this up without having to figure out your cache in advance, which is amazing. And it dynamically scales to what you need for your caching. And it basically does all of that using all of the things he just laid out to you in that presentation, which was amazing. And then he topped that off with announcing Aurora Limitless Database, which was basically, provides this automated horizontal scaling and to process millions of write transactions per second and manage petabytes of data in a single Aurora database. And you don't have to think about provisioning any of that or handling any of the sharding or any of the logic. They'll do all of that for you under the hood. Just incredible capabilities in both of these 2 announcements that will really make your life easier.
Yeah, the Aurora Limitless is just fascinating. Like, they're literally taking care of so much stuff that you have to deal with, okay, cool, this is now too large. And, the concept of sharding databases just goes away, which is phenomenal because I've helped so many people through, okay, we're going to start to shard in order to scale past this because we can't handle it in one database, even with read-only replicas and everything else. And the fact that it's all just taken care of, and the technical way of how they solve those problems is really, like Ryan said, just fascinating. Like, the little problems I have versus like the amount of stuff that they deal with, like, it's amazing that AWS stays functional. I feel like, with the complexity level that they are dealing with, Yeah,
I mean, imagine going to your developer and telling them, hey, I'd like you to shard our primary database into, hundreds of small little 100 megabit sections. And I'd like you to do that at scale. We're going to have about 10,000 of them. They would all blow, their heads would implode.
Yeah.
I'm like,
they just walk away.
Like, we're not going to do that. It doesn't make any sense.
Pitchforks.
Like, we got to do that because that's the only way we can provide an SLA and we can provide the throughput that you require. And we have to do it not at 10,000, but at hundreds of millions of shards.
Yeah.
Just bloggles your mind. There are a couple of cool things in this limitless thing too. The sharded, there's types of tables you can get. You can get sharded tables, which they handle the distribution for you, and you also get reference tables. So if there's data that all shards would need access to, and it should be available to all shard nodes, those reference tables can be actually distributed across all the shards as well. So you get the best of both worlds. Because one of the challenges in a large sharded environment is if there's a hot shard that has the reference data, that doesn't really help you. So they thought of that too, and they solved that problem as well. Just incredible. So this is available to you in preview. You do have to sign up for this one, but available now.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I was very happy to see the serverless Redis or serverless Elasticache, and it just watching Twitter and social media in general, like, just, you can never make people happy. Like, I would happily have paid somebody to set up one of those things for me, $90, but people are complaining. But they cost at least $90 a month. Like, are you kidding me?
It's not truly serverless. It's not truly free.
Yeah, and it's not really your solution. I mean, like, someone was talking to me earlier. I've been chatting in some of the Slack teams that are out there, like last week in AWS and OG AWS and stuff like that throughout the conference, and just chatting about what was being announced. And I said something about VPC networking, and he pinged me on the side as a DM, and we started chatting, and we got to secrets management. He's like, yeah, secrets management, $1 a secret's really outrageous. And I was like, yeah, but how much HashiCorp Vault wants? I mean, like, you're talking $200,000 minimum to even start with 2 nodes, let alone want to add to that. And I'm like, so $1 a secret doesn't seem too bad when you comparatively to the enterprise price. He's like, well, I never use those. I've only ever used the open source. I'm like, then that solution isn't for you. The same thing happened when they announced the SFTP thing. They're like, oh, $75 for an SFTP transfer service is outrageous when I can run it on a T2 micro. Yeah, great. Go run it on a T2 micro. Cool. I don't want to run it. And then so I'm going to use transfer.
Yep.
And now deal with the high availability and the security that's now complaining with you and everything else that you now have to do.
And I'm sure if you break down the total cost of ownership, right, it's still more expensive to use that managed service. But where's the value of my time going to be spent for the business? It's not running SFTP.
I mean, I guess it's fair to say that the word serverless is, people just abuse the hell out of it. And yes, sure, the server's running it in the background, but the important thing is you do not need to manage the servers, the number of servers, the size of the servers, or anything else. As far as you're concerned, you have the service, somebody else manages that stuff. So
completely worth it. And I get it. It's not truly serverless. When I'm doing a dev random project and I forget to leave that running, and it's going to cost me money, and that's going to suck, but
but I mean, again, it's such a weird, scale to zero is great if you can do it, but not everything deserves a scale to zero. Like, there's metadata, there's rules, there's things that you don't want to have go away to have performance. So, if you actually had scale to zero, people would bitch about the cold start.
Yep.
And exactly. So, no one would be happy ever. So you just kind of pass it. After these 2 announcements, the Peter's talk took a turn I did not expect.
Yeah, me too. I was also surprised.
He took a hard right turn into quantum computing and started talking about what they were doing with the Quantum Research Center they created, and really, started talking about qubits and how qubits are growing and expanding. So if you're interested in quantum, which I'm kind of not super interested, but I'm sort of curious from an intellectual perspective. So, it intrigued me, basically talking about, everyone's worried about RSA encryption being cracked. He said that the number of qubits required to do that is pretty extensive. But overall, he was talking about that we are still in the early days, and getting memory correction in qubits is really kind of the big holy grail we all have to solve, is the error rate. But to help researchers who are trying to solve those issues, they've now announced the general availability of Bracket Direct, a program that helps quantum researchers dive deep into quantum computing. The program lets you get dedicated private access to full capacity of various quantum processing units, or QPUs. Any queues or wait times, connect with quantum computing specialists to receive expert guidance for your workload, and get early access to features and devices with limited availability to conduct cutting-edge research on today's noisy quantum devices. Overall, fascinating talk portion to me.
I sort of laughed because I was confused by the turn, and so I was a little bit stymied when he started talking about quantum computers. And then I realized that when he was done, that I understood less about quantum computing than I did when I started. And now that's more on me than Peter. But it's, one of the fascinating things is just since I'm a learn by doing type of person, it's like you try to equate it to patterns you have and these types of things. And this is just one of those things that, nope, too new. That is not going to work for you. And so I am going to need the much smarter people to use Bracket Direct and come up with a use case that I can wrap my little brain around before I understand it. This is really I'm not there yet.
I'm going to make a prediction for the podcast in 4 years. Because I think bringing machine learning algorithms into quantum computing will be absolutely revolutionary.
Oh wow!
And that's never mind encryption. That's fine. You can throw a whole bunch of compute or whatever at cracking encryption keys, or we have spies. There's other ways to get data.
Well, it will be you won't have to train the model, right? Like that's the level of change that's going to introduce. This is going to be AI, but it's going to be AI in a completely different mechanism. It's crazy.
2027.
So that was the main things we talked about on stage. There was a couple other things they announced in the RSS feed, which he might have touched on. And sometimes they kind of hide these in there. But one was Amazon Code Catalyst introduces custom blueprints and a new enterprise tier. And then AWS Step Functions Workflow Studio, for those of you who are doing Step Functions thing, this is a new application composer to help it make it easier to create workflow functions, etc. And then HashiCorp announced a bunch of things they've done for the last year as well. It's out there if you're curious what HashiCorp and AWS have been up to as partners. That's available for your perusal if you'd like to. So yeah, Peter DeSantis night, great start to reInvent, my take.
Yeah.
It really was.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to Adam, Tuesday's keynote. So first of all, last year, I think we rightfully so said Adam was stiff as a board for most of the presentation. Didn't really seem to have his feet underneath him. Didn't really kind of, it was a far cry from the days of Andy Jassy and what he had been able to accomplish and do over the years. So this year, he came out polished and like he'd been doing 1,000 presentations. Mm-hmm. So, a year later, talking to all the investors, talking to all the analysts, talking to customers has been good for Adam. He's done a great job. Plus, he maybe got some coaching on and some practice with a coach for big time presentations. So he did, I thought, a great job overall for his keynote. What are your guys' general thoughts on his keynote?
Yeah, I felt very similar, right? Like I felt like it was smooth. It had a great delivery. I think, he felt animated through all that. And it had an energy that, I wasn't expecting from Adam, to be quite honest, since from his first few reinvents. And, I don't think the level of, announcements was anything different in the last few years. There's more of them, but they're no less impressive in the last few. But I just feel like it was a very cohesive story. And when it was over, I didn't feel like I had struggled through, a video keynote, which is a high bar.
Yeah, it was just felt more polished, and he really like kind of cleaned up the edges and kind of felt like he engaged a little bit more than just like, here, let me just read you this list of things.
Yeah, he just oozed confidence that he hasn't had in previous years, not just in his presentation, but in the subject matter. I think he was covering. I think he's much more familiar with the stuff now, and very good.
Yeah. A couple interesting announcements right off the bat. He didn't spend a lot of time on this, but it's actually kind of interesting, was the Amazon S3 Express one-zone high-performance storage class designed to deliver up to 10x better performance than the standard S3 storage class while handling hundreds of thousands of requests per second with consistent single-digit millisecond latency, making a great fit for your most frequently accessed data and your most demanding applications. Objects are stored and replicated on purpose-built hardware within a single AWS availability zone, allowing you to co-locate storage and compute resources to further reduce your latency. So this is really interesting from big machine learning things, ML use cases, etc. This is a foundational piece to allow you to rapidly spin up your resources and get rapid number of responses to an S3 bucket. This is a brand new bucket type. So when you create the bucket, it has to be specified this way specifically. It does leverage a new authentication model as well as all of your bucket naming is a little bit different as well. So to check out the notes on this capability, but excited to see where this one goes. I assume we'll see additional enhancements to it over time. You do pay 16 cents per gigabyte per month for this one, so it is a bit pricey. And so do be aware of that before you run out to go start using it. It does have only a 99.9% SLA because, again, it is only one availability zone. And so do keep that in mind. This is not for all of your highly important crown jewel data.
It just amazes me that they keep finding places and ways to innovate on S3. The service has been around for, I don't want to try to make up a number, but enough years where I'm like, okay, it's stable, like they're good. And every year there's always, one announcement. I feel like, it's object locking, it's this, it's just like these small features that just keep making this core crux service to pretty much everything else in AWS just slightly better and slightly more advanced, and they just add these extra little use cases here and there, that just make life better.
So it's a 17-year-old service, Matt.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, I know it can drive. 16. I know it could drive because we had that announcement, but it was a year or two.
I actually really was going to say 16, so I'm okay with that number. In fact, I should have said it originally.
Yeah, I would. If you had put me under pressure, I would have said 20-ish years, but I know I've been a little bit high, but it was close to that.
Have you been waiting months and months to hire your new AWS, GCP, or Azure architect, only to have them be poached at the 11th hour by a startup with a juice bar? Initiatives stalled because you're having trouble hiring? Well, I have a simple solution, Foghorn Consulting. Foghorn Consulting provides top-notch cloud engineers to the world's most innovative companies and can be burning down your DevOps and cloud backlogs as soon as next week. Foghorn certified AWS, GCP, and Azure professionals are armed with infrastructure as code, and from day one will be designing performant, optimized cloud-native or hybrid environments that deliver on the promise of cloud. Their FogOps solution even provides on-demand cloud engineering to augment your existing teams. Visit www.foghornconsulting.com or send an email to cloudtalentnow@foghornconsulting.com and tell them the CloudPod sent you. Your dedicated FogOps team is with you for the long haul, and they bring their own juice.
The next up is a Graviton 4 powered EC2 instance of the RAG. Of course, he didn't mention that the Graviton 4 would be better for AI, so I did not get a point. Boo. But nice to see the Graviton continuing to get improvements and investments on this. It is a memory optimized instance first out of the gate. And this newest Graviton 4 has 96 Neoverse V2 cores, 2 megs of L2 cache per core, and 12 DDR5-5600 channels working together to make the Graviton 4 up to 40% faster for databases, 30% faster for web applications, and 45% faster for large Java applications than the Graviton 3. Great to see continued improvements to that. I wish they had told us what nanometer size this was, because I assume they've dropped down now to 3 nanometers, but they did not mention that. At least that I saw.
I'd be surprised if they'd done that by yet. But actually,
yeah, I think they would make that announcement if they had.
Yeah.
5 nanometers. That's a pretty impressive improvement. Because I mean, Amazon's M3 is now down at 3 nanometers. But Apple also was driving a much higher yield number than maybe Amazon is. So I don't know. I'd be curious if they release more details with the chip.
Actually, I give you the point for the improved AI chips, because I did hear in one of the keynotes, and I can't remember which one it was, that somebody said that I hear it works best on Graviton on the Graviton chips. I can't remember which keynote that was in now. I'll have to go back and try and find it. But
he doesn't get the point. I think it was through that. Because I groaned in the first half of the sentence, and then it was like, oh no, they didn't. Aha!
Yeah. No, I should just have Graviton 4 and taken the easy point, but I was trying to be more competitive, so that's my fault.
Well, I thought they were going to announce bare metal Graviton 4, but they didn't announce that yet either. So
I was shocked that didn't happen too.
Yeah. And then we get into the AI part of Adam Slipsky's keynote. So Bedrock was front and center, all about customizing your models with your own data for fine tuning and continued pre-training. Agents for Bedrock are now available with improved control, orchestration, visibility into reasoning. We'll dump into that in a second. Guardrails for Bedrock, so your AI doesn't kill people. And the new generative AI capabilities for Amazon Data Zone to further simplify data cataloging and discovery preview. So if all that cataloging you were doing in a clean room, you don't have to do that now. You can just let AI figure out what it is, which then you use that to train the AI model. So it's just AI all the way down in that particular scenario. But moving back up to agents for Amazon Bedrock, Agents for Bedrock was announced in preview in July. Today, it is generally available. Agents for Amazon Bedrock helps you accelerate generative artificial intelligence application development by orchestrating multi-step tasks, and agents using the reasoning capability of foundational models to break down user-requested tasks into multiple steps. They use the developer to provide instructions to create an orchestration plan and then carry out the plan by invoking company APIs and accessing knowledge bases using retrieval. Augmented generation, or RAG, to provide a refined response to the end user. And I don't know why you care about this, Jonathan, so I'm hoping you're going to explain it to me.
Oh, I know.
I care about it because it's one thing to chat with a large language model. It's great to have ChatGPT and ask it questions, but it's very inactionable. Like, it's not connected to the world. It's connected to you through language, and that's it. So providing a service that actually lets you integrate the large language model and decisions based on what the customer is asking for, what the user is asking for, and turning that into something which is actionable in the real world through the use of APIs, somewhat, sometimes very complex series of steps, sometimes not, but the ability to put guardrails around those actions and to be able to integrate with basically the rest of your stack from this model through natural language interaction is absolutely fantastic. Like, this is the piece which will enable the Gen AI sort of revolution to be so impactful.
So if you think about having, like your internal wiki, right, available, you can have an agent then, query that data. It doesn't all have to be consumed into the model in order for that question to be answered.
Got it. Okay.
And that's really the power behind these things. Because I think with, we'll get into it when we talk a little bit in Warner's keynote, but like sustainability and of these things and where we use AI is going to become super important.
Yeah, it's like twofold. It's like, number one, it's like as trying to ask you to open a support case, it would need to make an API call to do that. But also, as we mentioned a couple of weeks ago on the podcast, we talked about, well, how can Google's Bard AI possibly keep up to date with all the new information in sort of in the news or published on websites without having to constantly retrain the model? It's because of agents like this, which can actually go out in real time and add context to the to the model at the time of being queried, which is cool. Which is also why the S3 millisecond latency lookups was so critical.
Yeah, the guardrails is super cool too, just because I think that this is the first thing I always think of, and I don't know what is wrong with my brain, how I was dropped as a child, but the first thing with new technology is, how can I break it?
Yeah.
And so this is one of those ways that, like putting these guardrails in place so that you can very easily, prevent the, violent content or inappropriate content or what have you, wherever you want to put your guardrails like into that, which is just making that an easy button, I think is super, super cool. And because it's kind of a difficult challenge with using just basic, AI tools to do that, right? With how do you safeguard against that data? How do you clean your data set enough?
Yeah, it's like the example of the from New Zealand, the AI that was supposed to help people create recipes from food in their fridge, and somebody put in the word bleach, and so it started making recipes containing bleach. Mm-hmm. Like that's when you need guardrails.
Yeah, exactly.
People are stupid.
Or Darwin.
You need guardrails.
Well, and they're prone to pranks and having fun on the internet, and there's like the Twitter bots that became instantly racist based off of human response. People are gonna have fun, and sometimes there has to be an adult, and sometimes there doesn't need to be an adult. So now it's a choice, which I like.
Yeah.
Well, the next came up is Q. So Matt and I hit it out of the park in this section of the keynote. So Q is basically the launch of their large language model, and they integrated it everywhere except for support for Jonathan, which we'll talk about that in a little bit. But basically, Q is now taking over all of your AWS console, and you might hate it, because I do. I hate it. I'd like it to go away. It's not very good. It's definitely a hackathon project turned into production, a little bit more polished than the Party Rock, I think.
Yeah.
But basically, they announced several features around Amazon Q, including the new AI-powered assistant for IT pros and developers. So this is in the console part of it. You can improve developer productivity with Gen AI with Amazon Q and the Amazon Code Catalyst. You can upgrade your Java applications automatically with Amazon Q code transformation. Allegedly, I would test that. Introduce Amazon Q, which is the AI powered assistant itself. And then QuickSight uses a new generative AI system for quicker, easier data insights with Q for QuickSight, and Q for Amazon Connect, which if Amazon actually used Amazon Connect, Jonathan would have got a point, but they don't because they're idiots. Amazon Q will facilitate improved contact center service. So Q has taken over the world, and basically Q will be now out there all the place. The part that I find the funniest is you cannot search for Q in the console because it's one letter, and the console limitation is that you have to have at least 2 letters. So I don't know exactly how to find it in the console. I am hoping I can turn it off because I really don't like it. It's really in the way. And if it's on mobile, it takes over the full screen trying to help you out, which is annoying. That's
terrible.
But it does have interesting use cases too, where it can connect to all of your internal repositories of data. So like Jira, Confluence, SharePoint, all of those type of sites, similar to what Kendra does, but it's all built into Q, which is annoying because you can't just reuse the Kendra stuff. You have to re-implement with Q. But then all of that gets available to your business users as well. So if you want to have your business users have access to it, it's $20 a month per user. If you'd like to have that access to also the Amazon data from your own instance of Q, that's an extra $5 a month per user on top of that. Or you just go to the console and get that for free directly in the console. Like I said, it's not great. So maybe wait this one out 6 months.
But Amazon, didn't quite understand how much documentation they have that's old and out of date before building that in. So it's clearly the answers aren't to snuff. But I do think that that's going to improve over time, and I think that this model is what we're going to see just take over everything. And, you know, reality, this is 90% of my function in my day job, right? Like all I do is provide context that bridges gaps between, you know, business problems and how to do this and what's the best way to do that. And so I'm stoked because I've made the joke for years that I should be cloned, and that's the only way that this is going to scale. And now we can. So that's fine. And it probably gets better answers today than I do.
You haven't tried it yet, have you?
Yeah, you haven't tried it yet.
I have not used it because it does not.
Is it that bad? Ouch. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think my answers are great. So
it probably would solve the level of questions that you get asked on a regular basis, but it would not solve your questions. Let's put it that way.
I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. What's interesting, the way, you know, let me rephrase that. What's not surprising of the way they presented it was, you know, and it's kind of throughout the whole keynote here too, is like, when we built this as enterprise grade to start off. So it has permission, security, compliance, and everything really built into it. And they shove it down your throat throughout every step of the keynote. And they really want to make sure that you understand, you know, because talking with colleagues and peers and everyone else in the industry, everyone's always worried about what it has access to and how it has access and everything else. And, you know, they really wanted to make it so that the CISOs of the world that don't understand anything about, you know, Gen AI or anything, start to finally believe that this is not a terrible, horrible security practice that's going to steal all your data and give it to Amazon to do what they want with it. You know, they really make a point to say throughout this whole keynote, it's isolated, it's built from the ground up to be enterprise. It's in, you know, you can link it to your VPC, you know, it's tied to your account. None of the model generations are based on your data unless if you have a fine-tuned model for you. Like throughout this whole keynote, you know, throughout really all of reInvent, every time they mention it, you know, which I think is important because so many people, this world has come up, in the last realistically 14, 15 months at the high end, you know, so like it's so new that a lot of people still are like, no, we can't use it. It's scary. It's like the cloud was when it first came out, you know, and hopefully this will kind of get people to start to trust these models and Gen AI and how to leverage it a little bit more.
You know what I hear when they say it's enterprise ready and it runs with the same permissions as the user who's running it? I hear, hold my beer.
Yeah. Let me see if I can break it. Yeah.
I thought you said hold my paycheck, hold my wallet.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of confidence in that. It was like, how do you honor the permissions? Like you had to understand the permission boundary. And if you have access to the data in your index or in your model, then like, how do you know this user does or doesn't have access unless it can translate the access layer? Like that was a little bit of voodoo magic to me, and I was skeptical.
I'm curious how that works.
I think that's why they can't just import Kendra. The Kendra data is because of that, right? They're enriching that metadata as part of that model training. And, you know, like I'm sure it works with a certain level of, you know, resilience and reliability. But I mean, this is honestly what has prevented me from rolling out like something like Kendra, is because you only can solve this by giving it full access to everything in there. And then everything's in that data set when you're querying Kendra. And no, I haven't been able to convince a business that that's comfortable. Right. So there's sensitive data that needs to be restricted. And so I'm hoping that this solution works for that. We can actually provide search capabilities across multiple internal business sets that are better than the one in Confluence. That's all I want.
Just make your Confluence public facing. It will be perfectly fine.
I'm definitely eager to see what it does in real life. But yeah, like you said, lots of questions, lots of be careful. Don't just go roll this out. I assume it's preview gated right now because it's just based on what they have on the Amazon console. It's not ready for prime time, in my opinion. So it should be limited access at best.
$20 user is nothing to sneeze at either, right? Depending on if you're a company at scale.
Yeah, one of the things they didn't cover was how the business users would access Q. Like, does it have its own web portal, or do I have to force them to the Amazon console? Because I could see that being fun.
Chime.
I just see they have a Slack integration for Q.
Q for Chime.
Yeah, gateway.
Does Chime support bots?
I don't know. I try not to use it very much.
Yeah.
I swear every time I have to use it. It's like whenever I have to join an Amazon meeting, the first thing I do is, why are we using Chime, guys?
At least the web interface is decent now. I used to have to update the client all the time every time I got on an Amazon call because it was always getting updated and you couldn't join a call beforehand. But, then the last big area of Adam's keynote was around zero ETL. And we just talked about this a couple weeks ago, the zero ETL capability for Aurora MySQL. They now brought that to Postgres in preview as well as they brought zero ETL for OpenSearch, for DynamoDB to OpenSearch, Amazon RDS for MySQL to Redshift, DynamoDB to Redshift, and Aurora PostgreSQL to Redshift, as I mentioned before. And Amazon Connect also has a zero ETL analytics data lake capability as well. So apparently this is going to be a theme. We're going to see a lot of zero ETL everywhere. And so we saw it mentioned here. It also gets mentioned a couple other times in other keynotes as well as they continue to add more features. So either this is really easy to integrate and every dev team is rushing to support zero ETL, or this is something they've been working on for a while. As anytime we get rid of an ETL process on a managed service, that's a great win. So
yeah, I think that's really what it is ETL is so lame and so difficult to do between disparate data sources that, if this is where we can make the computers to work for us, there's a lot of value in it for it. So I can't wait to see the downside on this one, because having done a lot of ETL pipelines,
they have that anomaly detection for your ETL earlier. There's all kinds of fun that you can run to an ETL. So I bet it only really supports some simple use cases, and you get into complicated things. I bet it falls down pretty quick.
I mean, they get the double revenue from storage.
Mm-hmm. Right exactly.
There. That's.
I mean, a little while ago, I was kind of complaining about the people who harp on about serverless still using servers, but I'm going to say it's still ETL. Like it's not magic. You don't have to buy a tool to do it for you because it's built in now. You still have to configure it, and it's still ugly to configure it.
Oh, do you have to configure the transformation rules still?
Yeah.
No, that's not how it works. It basically, you tell it what tables you want from this database, and it dumps the entire tables over to the Redshift or whatever else. You don't have to make any,
you don't have
more
to.
complicated than that. It doesn't do.
You don't have.
It just restructures your keys to where they're all unique. What could go wrong?
Yeah.
I saw a screenshot right there. It looks pretty ugly if you actually want to be a little fine grained about what you replicate from place to place, and it's going to be pretty expensive if you replicate everything. But I will say that it's a great application of change streaming, DynamoDB streams or Postgres streams, where it's stream events for changes in tables. This is how they've enabled the zero ETL stuff, is because they just hook into a change stream from those data sources, and they just send it somewhere else with EventBridge or something else.
Well, I think going back to Peter's talk, he talked about how important the log is in Aurora. And I think they're heavily leveraging the log, and to basically replay whatever you want to. And if you don't need the data, they just throw it away.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Well, the Postgres one is probably that feature they added a few years ago, which was like you can have a change to a certain table trigger a Lambda. That's what I'm picturing. This is kind of just based on. Still thought that was a terrible life choice. Just saying.
All right, let's move on to Swami's keynote. We're not going to spend a lot of time here.
You mean us on the AI keynote? What?
Yeah, so you know what a vector engine is. There's one for DocumentDB and one for OpenSearch. The Titan image generator, the multimodal embeddings, and text models are now available in Bedrock to you. You get the latest version of Claude 2.1 in Bedrock. You get OpenSearch Zero ETL integration with S3, because if you didn't want to go into an Octave thing, you can put it into S3 instead. You can analyze large amounts of graph data to get insights to find trends with Amazon Neptune Analytics, and then a bunch of clean room features, including differential privacy enhancements, ability to help customer and partners apply ML models without sharing raw data, and Redshift has added new AI capabilities, including Amazon Q, to boost efficiency and productivity.
That was a pretty quick summary. The vector search stuff and the vector engine, though, I think are really, really good features that people will find useful applications for, because in ML models, vectors are everything, but in static data sets like JSON documents and things, it's really hard to search for things that are like something else but not exactly the same. Like if you got pictures of buildings and you say, well, give me all the red buildings, well, which shade of red exactly are you asking for is what Postgres or SQL Server would be saying, what's the RGB color that you're looking for? Whereas vector searches will let you say, I found all these results, and these are the closest things to what you're asking for that I can find. Or these are the 10 closest things I can find. And so it lets you search for things that are like other things without having to search for precisely what you're looking for or what the results might contain.
Yeah, it's the challenge of spectrum versus spectrum of things that you think are red versus what a computer thinks is red, which is very specific and very scientific.
Yeah, so could extend to other things where like geographical locations. So show me all the things in this area, but not at a specific location and stuff like that. So it opens up a lot of possibilities for those databases.
I do love the OpenSearch ETL integration with S3 because then I don't have to ever use Athena again. So that's nice.
I thought of you when I heard that. Very grateful for you for learning Athena.
There's a bunch of other MLAI stuff also announced during the keynote, or was loosely mentioned during the keynote because they dropped it all at the same time. Amazon SageMaker Hyperpod, a purpose-built infrastructure for distributed training at scale. You can package and deploy models faster with new tools and guided workflows in SageMaker. You can use natural language to explore and prepare data with a new capability of Amazon SageMaker Canvas. That one's kind of nice. Amazon SageMaker adds inference capabilities to help reduce foundation model deployment cost and latency. You can leverage foundational models for business analysis with Amazon SageMaker Canvas. SageMaker Clarify makes it easier to evaluate and select foundational models and evaluate, compare, and select the best foundational model for your use case in Amazon Bedrock Preview, which is using MLAI to determine which MLAI model is best for you. It's a little, again, AI all the way down. And there's a new capability to deploy SaaS applications directly to by Quick Launch and the AWS Marketplace. And then the one that I was most interested in is OpenSearch clusters are now 30% better price performance improvement with a new OR1 instance benefit. So you can now get a better price performance for all of your OpenSearch needs, which is nice to see as well, because OpenSearch, we mentioned, was still just as expensive as Elasticsearch when they first came out. And so to see some price performance improvements there is good to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What was their SKUs before? Was it just like, R4 large type thing, or?
Yeah, basically very similar to RDS instances. They weren't purpose built. I think you could do Graviton in OpenSearch if you wanted to. But yeah.
But now they're more purpose built, which probably means they're also running on ARM, and you can see the GP3 in here too. Yeah. So they're really becoming very much more cloud specific, which is nice.
Something to see here that I remember seeing in the keynote, and it was around automated testing. So once you built a model, like how do you validate it to make sure that it does what you want it to do? And then I don't see the press release for that one, or I don't remember what it's called. But I actually think that's a really useful feature because there hasn't been any tooling around how do you test whether this particular checkpoint of a model meets your needs or not. Or can you easily break out of it? Can you not break out of it? Especially for people who are going to deploy chatbots on websites and things like that, you don't want people to start asking it random questions and having it provide like financial advice when it's supposed to be talking about landscaping or interior design or something. One of those other things.
Or it leads to porn. I mean, that's always the worst.
all roads lead. Yeah.
So they're in the package and deploying models faster with new tools and guided workflows for SageMaker. They do mention testing of the model as part of kind of this particular offering in the studio. So as part of the studio, you can define the testing steps that you want to use in that. So that might be what you're referring to.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah. I was impressed.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, Swami's a very smart guy. I just, for us, it's a lot to unpack what we already unpacked with Q and everything else. So if you're really into that space, definitely check out the show notes for those as well. And that leaves us to today and Werner's keynote, which I did not give a masterclass on AI, which was okay. I prefer what he did instead, which was, basically gave us kind of a sustainability and cost management talk all around basically becoming frugal architects. And he basically has launched a new website called thefrugalarchitect.com where he outlines his 7 rules of frugal architecture, or 7 laws, essentially, to basically help you identify things that will make your systems cheaper. And this is a good talk for the macro climate issues that are currently happening in the world. And then goes into a bunch of other topics as well around observability, console improvements, and more SageMaker things. We'll talk about those here in a second. But general thoughts of the overall keynote.
So Warner did touch on AI, and he hit on the points that I was hoping that he would hit on, because I like the way he sort of frames problems and technology for AI. So while this wasn't an AI masterclass, he did actually touch on like the key highlight for me in AI, which is not everything has to be pumped through these very large models. And, we're going to have to develop some nuance into how we use this technology, because it's too expensive to use it the way that we're doing now. Like every time I ask ChatGPT for like what advice on what I should paint my room, like I just, in my mind, I'm like, someone has just paid $1,000 for that, and it's, to make it a real sustainable technology, it's going to have to be one of those things where we're making choices about which model, and just like code logic, where we're doing if then else, we're actually going to pump that question through multiple models. And, Peter Santos talked about that a little bit with the way that they're moving some of the workloads around in the Caspian section of the hypervisor. And I just think it's a really neat area. And I think it's neat because it's getting into that nuance where it makes it practical to me, where it's like, no, it's not all just sort of like generating, content for resumes and different general purpose questions.
I mean, he also kind of implied, don't buy into the hype.
Yep.
And I think that's, that is one of the things about Amazon is they've invested a ton of money in what we can consider to be traditional ML, SageMaker, building out custom, machine inference and building out the capabilities for machines to self-learn on these different things. And rightfully so, LLM is just one aspect of what you can do with that type of technology. They've done way more interesting things with healthcare, with other, contract recognition, where they pull text bits out of different things with, image recognition. Like they've done a lot of really cool ML things that they're not really getting credit for because they didn't build an AI LLM.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, it's sort of interesting because, Adam had to basically say Gen AI as many times as possible, which we'll talk about that a little bit too, to basically, make the Wall Street people happy. And the reality is, it's not what they care about a lot. Q is going to be something we think about and laugh about probably for 6 months, and then they'll get probably pretty decent. And then will we really care about it in 3 years from now? It's just part of the console experience. Probably not. So,
I mean, it'll still be there. It won't go away.
It won't go away,
right?
But it just becomes part of our workflow, and it's not going to be transformative. Where the ML things they're doing are transformative. Like it detects cancer in X-rays, for goodness sakes, and helps save people's lives. Like that's transformative ML. That's not Gen AI.
I mean, I just liked how he went back, like you said, back to the basics, right? Of like, so many people like move to the cloud and do all these things, and it's not cheaper to be in the cloud, like, period. Like we talked about this in the past, but if you architect right, and it kind of just goes back to the fundamentals of, while all this hype is out there, don't forget the fundamentals of the cloud and how to make it work and not destroy your business.
Yeah, he talked about, back at Amazon before the AWS Web Services really built, before they built all of the magic of their cloud and the engineering things they did to make sure that the website didn't fall over, on Black Friday when everyone wanted to go buy this thing. Or I think he actually talked about in concept of the Switch or something, where like there was some new Nintendo coming out and there was some rumor on the internet.
PS4, like I thought.
Yeah, there was some rumor they were going to have it for $500 off at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday. And so millions of people are hitting F5, and like, how do you keep a site up when people are just bashing it, trying to get the deal of the day? And so those were constraints that you used to have to deal with, and then you have to design for those constraints. And now with the cloud, you remove the constraint and you bury the needle in the exact opposite direction. And you spend as much as it takes and you just deliver that. And he's saying that's not a good thing. Like in this macro climate, that's no longer the thing, which is where the frugal architecture really kind of comes into play. And his 7 laws, which we can go over here in a second. But, that was really kind of his point. And it's good. Like these are the conversations that Ryan and I try to have with engineering people all the time and about costs and like architecture and what are you doing? And is this the right cost-effective architecture? And so, I appreciate that he's coming out and saying this, because I think, in past years, he's never said, go crazy, but he's also been like, take advantage of the power of the scale of the cloud, which is that bearing in the other direction. And now people need to think differently.
I think it's nice to have a website to point people to, because it's one thing to be sitting in meetings and trying to explain concepts to people, but it seems like unless you've got some other resource to back it up, like people often don't want to listen. I'm like, now we can point to the website. Look, this guy, he just happens to be the CTO of Amazon.
Yeah,
potentially one of the most influential CTOs in the world right now, and he agrees.
Yeah.
I have notes and times of like certain things where there's like, if you work with me in the day job, I apologize in advance. You're about to hear a whole bunch about frugalarchitect.com. And because it's just these are conversations I've been having with people for years, but the way you frame it and the way he does it is a way that's really easy to absorb, I think, from a larger audience. And doesn't sound like a crazy person yelling at you in a hallway, which is where my conversations frequently go.
We're thinking about Ryan all the time. Like, he's yelling at me again about things I don't understand.
Yeah.
But I also like at one point, which really struck home, is something I've always really tried to explain to people, and the way he presented, like Ryan said, it's just so simple. It's like there's functional and non-functional requirements, and deciding which are your functional, which are your non-functional requirements, really make a difference. So, in his example, the search on Amazon.com has to be up and operational, and that's a tier 1 feature. So you put it in 3 AZs or multi-region and make it hot, where the little backend thing, and really taking a look at your whole architecture and figuring out what's important and what's not, and then building the right tool in the right place, which I'm sure people that I've worked with in the past have heard me say before, but doing it from both a cost, sustainability, management level, really is also important, and that's something that a lot of people don't do. They're like, oh, this is a new thing. We just need it in three AZs right now. I'm like, but do you? Like, I need it to be in multi-regions, but do you really need your wiki page in hot in both regions? Like, if it went down for 12 hours, or 24 hours, like, do you really need the same RPO or RTO on that as you would if, for your production, purchasing website? So, like, really looking at those things and really making sure that the sustainability and the costs move into non-functional requirements, of just, these are baseline conversations you need to have. And these aren't like, hey, we got our 7th bill, we're fully migrated. Holy hell, why is our bill so expensive? And then re-architecting and dealing with it at that point, which I wouldn't have a job if people didn't do that. So I'm a little bit happy about it. But at the same point, like, it's something I've been trying to explain to people for a long time.
I'd rather be building cool crap with cloud technologies than talking to them about turning their shit off at night because they don't.
Seriously.
That's my next month conversation.
No, I had that conversation earlier this week about I get it. People don't understand that concept, and they don't. But because they haven't seen it, and they're still living in a world where traditional infrastructure takes weeks to inflict change. Like, they just don't see it as a reality, and they fight it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So real quickly, his 7 laws, just to kind of anchor this a little bit. So law 1 is make a cost a non-functional requirement. Law 2 is systems that last align cost to the business. Law 3 is architecting is a series of trade-offs. Law 4 is unobserved systems lead to unknown costs.
Love it.
Law 5 is cost-aware architectures implement cost controls. Law 6, cost optimization is incremental. And Law 7, unchallenged success leads to assumptions.
I like the last one. It's so true.
Yeah, the last one is super. I hadn't even thought about how powerful that was until he went over it and had that quote from Grace Hopper. And I just... it might be my first tattoo, honestly. This is great.
I took a screenshot of the YouTube video because I watched it afterwards, and I might have sent the most dangerous phrase in the English language is we've always done it this way to many people I know, and a few that are probably going to get yelled at in the next 24 hours for it.
Oh yeah, no, it's already on my list. It's going to be a thing.
That should be a t-shirt. It should be a t-shirt, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm going to just change my background, I think, on Teams to that of like the most dangerous friend, and just leave it up and see how many people, get mad at me.
The cool thing too is if you wanted more information about these, you can click directly into them and they give you a much more deeper perspective on it. And, one of the controversial things of this, I was just looking at this one because it has the Grace Hopper quote, but it also mentions the, programming language is a common area where we're a Java shop is a phrase heard too often innovation. But the controversial thing he said actually in his thing was that you should all be developing in Rust.
Yeah.
Apparently
what a statement. Yeah.
Rust is more energy efficient for sustainability, which was the other part of the cost thing is that if you're doing all this Gen AI and it costs you billions of dollars and you're doing all these things at cost, you're not being very sustainable. And so then he highlights that this study that came out basically shows that Rust is one of the most cost efficient and green in programming languages you can do because of how efficient it is at running code. And so it's sort of funny to me because I'm like, isn't most of Amazon on Java though?
Yeah, I imagine
most of everything is on Java.
Next year it's going to be we've saved this much money, this much CO2, this many dollars, this much compute time by porting all our stuff over to Rust.
Maybe that's why all those Amazon people are leaving. They don't want to learn Rust.
I thought it was I've never seen that chart before. I mean, it was in the background, but like apparently there was a full study about like different programming language, and I was like, that's kind of cool. I kind of want to know how they did that, so I need to go find that actual case study and follow sleep reading.
I was gonna look it up. Maybe we can talk about that next week in our cloud journey section, or a couple weeks from now, because the next show is right after this one. But speaking of that,
breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah, we should probably try to get through the last of this here. So there was a couple announcements, even though Werner started out saying, I don't have any cool announcements to say today, which is when I tuned out this morning when I was driving to the airport. But then he did announce things during the keynote. So first up was the Amazon CloudWatch application signals for automatic instrumentation of your applications. Basically, this is automatic APM instrumentation. There's a new My Applications in the AWS Management Console, which simplifies managing your application resources. And I went to go use this today, and I don't like it. It's conceptually good, but the right way to implement it is with tags. But they give you this option to not use tags, where you can go create things. You just go select the resources, and then it'll just tag it for you. Which now is broken on my Terraform. I'm sure when I try to Terraform apply it tomorrow, that infrastructure, because I didn't do it, I did ClickOps. But then once you get kind of the dashboard is kind of noisy, and there's a lot of extraneous data that I don't necessarily think needs to be in the dashboard that they created for this. So I might be able to get it to where I want it to be, but it's out of the box experience was a little lacking.
Okay.
The Amazon SageMaker Studio is adding a web-based interface, a code editor, because apparently they forgot they have Code 9, a flexible workspace, and streamlines user onboarding available to you. And this is using a bunch of open source capabilities in the IDE. As well as the IDE extension for AWS Application Composer enhances the visual modern applications development with AI-generated infrastructure as code. This is an infrastructure as code, low-code, no-code solution. And then 3 new capabilities to Amazon Inspector to broaden the realm of vulnerability management, including CI/CD pipeline injection, EC2 inspection, and generative AI inspection for Lambda, all available to you in the new Amazon Inspector items. And then there's a couple of things also announced, not in the keynote, but were pretty interesting as well. We'll talk about those in a second. Anything from the keynote announcements you guys want to mention first that I didn't cover?
Oh, not that you didn't cover. I think that the more powerful application of that IDE extension for Application Composer is less the low code sort of building of the flow, but more of the other way around, where you're visualizing what you've built. And maybe that's just from my perspective, but I think that's, like the dragging and dropping of things, there's always so much minutia that has to be handled between those steps. But, being able to use the application composer and now step functions within Application Composer and building all those things. And so now running that through where I've now got built deployment architecture diagrams that I can just export and use is super cool. And it's really good for communicating what's going on and describing your code and, working with it. And so I'm pretty stoked about it. I have not tried to create boxes via the UI and have that work, because I don't think it's gonna.
All right. So then the announcements that were happening outside of the keynote, Amazon Fault Injection Service, or FIZ, which allows you to do chaos engineering, of course, in the cloud, is launching 2 new scenarios that will let you demonstrate that your application performs as intended if an AWS availability zone experiences a full power interruption or connectivity from one AWS region to another is lost. You can use the scenarios to conduct experiments that will build confidence that your application, whether single region or multi-region, works as expected when something goes wrong. helps you to gain a better understanding of direct and indirect dependencies, and test recovery times. So that's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely helps with all those, we talked about it
Can you use this on
earlier,
GCP?
compliance tests and everything else.
I hope so.
No,
I mean, also,
you can't use it on
also
GCP.
the amount of things that I feel like I've...
That's the joke, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's built in.
The amount of like compliance things as like, is your application actually multi-AZ? Or look at the Cloudflare. No. What was the big outage that we talked about too?
Cloudflare.
It was Cloudflare. It was a management API.
Yeah. Yeah, like if they, obviously they're not in AWS, but they can better simulate this. And, years ago, I remember we had to like simulate this and we were like, okay, how do we do this? We're going to put NACLs in place to try to block this and do this and to try to actually like isolate the traffic to prove that the application could function with a zone down. It was like nearly impossible to actually do the test. So you're really just tabletopping it.
Yeah.
So I feel like the zonal outage is like phenomenal. I haven't looked too much at the regional
I guarantee the Cloudflare outage, they've done multiple tabletops and they've done simulations and they've done all that, but you forget about those core infrastructure services that are tied to there because they don't have the same level of investment and they're not in the same level of scrutiny of review. And there's always going to be something. And so this is, some ability to detect that. And so even a few years ago, Amazon's still facing these types of things within their infrastructure at their scale and size and how long they've been doing it. It's not an easy problem. And so the more that gets automated away where you can sort of test things and visualize problems without it being an actual outage is fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Amazon having these issues all the time, that's a good segue to the other one you want to talk about, which is zonal auto, which allows you to automatically shift your traffic away from availability zones when we detect potential issues or when Amazon detects potential issues. So this is a capability of Amazon Route 53 application recovery controller. Allows you to enable automatically and safely shift your workload's traffic away from availability zones when AWS identifies a potential failure affecting the availability zone and shift it back once the failure is resolved. So when I first read this, I was kind of like, I don't think I understand it very well. But then it kind of clicked in my head. I was like, oh, well, if RDS is broken in AZ1, but everything else is working right, I'm still routing traffic in the front end to this thing that's going to hit an RDS node that's dead. And that's not so great. So if I can at least turn it off on a DNS level, then I can shift all the components that are living in a single AZ to the other AZs that I know are fully working and fully operational. And think about it from a full stack health perspective versus a partial component level health perspective. And so it does make a lot of sense why you would want this. And so this is a nice improvement. Now that I understood it, when I first read it, I didn't get it, but it clicked with me earlier.
What I like about this is that it runs weekly. So if you look at the article, like it runs, I think it was like once a week, and like you can tell it when not to do it. So it's like you get, the problem is, everyone says they have CM code. And my question always when I was consulting was like, hey, when was the last time you actually ran your CM code? And they were like, well, about 6 months ago. I'm like, well, then it doesn't work. So this is essentially perpetually testing your environment and always making sure that it's actually going to fail over properly. The other flip side of it is they don't charge for it, but on the same point, you have to make sure that you always actually have enough capacity to fail over, which I assume you're going to need either way if you're building and architecting your application, right? So in theory, you might have to have a little bit extra resources, but the perpetual testing is really what I liked about this. That's built in day one. Not like we're going to add this feature later on.
I think it solves the problem, which is always like, well, when should we fail over? Do we fail over if one service fails? Do we fail over the whole stack? Do we fail over just a part of the stack? I've like racked my brains over the years about the right way to do that, and I kind of came to the conclusion in the end that you should run each app in each AZ independently, and if anything fails in an AZ, then you write it off. You write it off and move all the traffic to the one that does work. You shouldn't have these like cross AZ things. Well, today we'll use the database in this zone, and if it doesn't work, then we'll try and reach it in the other zone. No, it's just far too complicated. It's much more simple to make them independent, and then this solves a problem that now you don't need an SRE person to press the red button to reroute the traffic because it does it for you. And you can test it.
Well, and rerouting the traffic was painful, right? Like if you're in a production environment, you're changing a configuration that's in your production. Like, and in some cases it changed, where it's relaunching that load now. Like, ugh.
Yep.
All right. Well, that takes us through all of Reinvent. that we now know. So you're still with us after an hour and 33 minutes. Thank you for being with us.
I'm shocked.
And now let's talk about the predictions and how we did here. So first up is Jonathan, who picked first, had the best choices, the best chances, who got 0 points. He missed on CPU support for Lambda or GPU support for Lambda functions. He missed chatbot integration for support portal that pulls from documentation. He missed new bare metal instances of more GPUs for AI training. Would you like to argue your points on any of those, Jonathan?
Well, I realize that SageMaker has a serverless inference offering, and so that's how they provide GPU to serverless. Oh, but that's really restricted to.
I was going to say, that's the one you're going to argue?
No, it's not. No, I just want to.
That's not the one to argue.
It's a diversionary tactic.
Yeah, I see. Sorry, I ruined it.
So I guess it doesn't solve the bigger case of people might want GPUs in serverless. I still think it's a use case for it, but I imagine they make a whole lot more money selling it as a SageMaker product than they would as a Lambda product charged by the millisecond. I'm not going to argue the chatbot integration for the support portal. I don't think Q's anywhere near good enough. And what I had in my mind was an AI agent that would take a first pass at answering your questions, refer you to documentation. I don't think it's anywhere close to being that good yet. I'd like to think it would be in the future. Come back in a year, we'll check it again. And the bare metal instances it wasn't necessarily more GPUs, but sort of better bare metal instances for AI training. They also kind of brought that into SageMaker as well with a managed pods. And so if I was going to argue any of those, I would say that providing a service that manages training clusters through SageMaker kind of covers my number 3. But I'm happy to get 0 points.
Okay. Earlier, you're trying to argue the chatbot integration with support portal, which, like if they use Amazon Connect, I would give in this all day long. But they don't use Amazon Connect for their own support uses, which is sort of weird, isn't it? So
yeah. Surprise.
I mean, if I went to the support portal and the Q console thing is there and is answering questions, I might have given it to you, but
I mean, I literally just tested it. Just I went to Q, so I'm like looking just in general, but I don't think it's in the support area.
It's not at all.
You can ask it to open a case for you, and it gives you kind of an embedded support form right there in the chat. And then I was like, well, that's just a web form. Like, I don't really count that. So then I was like, well, maybe if I get to a point where I'm like asking about quotas, if it will, prompt, say, hey, I can open a support case for you around increasing your quota limit. It gave me a link to like, hey, you can open a support case. It gave me the answer that it could do that. And here's a link to go to support, but it didn't actually do anything to help me on that.
Yeah.
It's coming. Yeah. It'll be there.
It'll be there. It's just not there now.
Yeah.
So maybe they need to get Connect for their support team.
I should have predicted Graviton 4 or Trainium 2, which I predicted Trainium 2 last year, and then they missed, and they did Graviton 3E last. They did 3E last year.
They didn't announce Trainium 3 this year either. I think that's going to come at a summit.
Well, they did Trainium 2 this year, but they did Graviton 4 because last year they did Graviton 3E instead of Graviton 4. So whatever.
That's true. Yeah. So speaking of that, that moves it to me. So yeah, I missed on Graviton AI chip capabilities. I did get a Graviton chip, but I specifically said AI. Olympus with a bigger data set than OpenAI and publicly available. That is Q. You're welcome. And major improvements to QuickSight. I got Q in QuickSight, which I'm taking as a major improvement to QuickSight. So there you go.
I don't know about the major. They just added a feature. That's not
it's the only thing that's going to make QuickSight usable.
Yeah,
so,
QuickSight. And so they make me a table that shows me, my consumption over whatever time. It's a good feature. Like I saw the demo by Power BI by Microsoft, and I was in love with the feature. So the fact that's in QuickSight is awesome. So I'm taking it.
A bigger data set than OpenAI, though.
They did say that it was big.
We're all just taking shots at Justin.
I just ignore them. Ryan.
Yeah.
Ryan had,
as usual,
had app management support serverless workloads that didn't come. I'm surprised about that one, actually. I thought you had that was a good hit, I thought, but didn't come. Data sovereignty on stage was not mentioned on stage, but was mentioned as a pre-invent item. And then just-in-time IAM permissions powered by AI, you got as a pre-invent as well. We should give you like half point for those. We should change it next year to give points for pre-invent stuff. Like anything after we've made the prediction should count. I think it's not the stage. And then Matt on his first attempt came out swinging. So he got AI chat feature in the AWS console with Q, 100%. That was him. And then carbon emissions and green technology, Werner helped him out in a big way. I thought he was going to be screwed going into Werner's keynote. They started talking about sustainability. I'm like, son of a bitch. And then you did miss out on predictive typing thing integrated into AWS Shell, like Cloud9. We talked about that earlier. So that basically puts you at 2 points and me at 2 points, which means we go to the tiebreaker.
Dun, dun, dun.
Which we foolishly, and we're never doing this again, chose the number of times that artificial intelligence and or AI was said in a keynote, which meant that I had to go spend money with Rev to basically run through it to figure this out. I tried to use Amazon Transcribe, but it could not properly detect AI in text. It could not. I don't know what it was doing. And then I'm sure it would have completely failed on Werner's accent. Which would have been horrible. So I do have the Word documents if you'd like to review them for accuracy of these numbers, if you want to dispute them. But basically, Matt said there'd be 72. Ryan said 563. I said there'd be 142. And Jonathan said there'd be 90. And so the results were Monday Night Live mentioned AI and artificial intelligence just twice, which was shocking because he went quantum. But if that had been an AI talk, he would have been in good shape. Adam S. mentioned it 109 times, which was the winner of all the keynotes. Shockingly enough, Swami only said it 65 times, and Werner only said it 29 times, which brings us to a total of 204 times, which means that for Price is Right rules, I win the tiebreaker. Victorious once again.
Yeah.
I need to pay more attention next time. I thought we were only going with the main, like the first keynote, Adam Slisky's keynote. Yeah.
That's what I thought too, but I'll take.
I mean, in the scenario where it was just Adams, just checking here, Matt would have still lost. Or no, Matt won. Matt would have won.
I still would have lost
if you just did Adams' keynote. Oh, no, Jonathan would have got the tiebreaker point. I mean, it doesn't count because he's not in the tiebreaker. You and I are in the tiebreaker. So, yes, technically Matt wins. Well, nice for showing. I always intended to be all three keynotes, but, whatever. I don't care.
Yeah.
But you did 4. Wait, but there's 4 keynotes that we counted.
Yeah, we did, and we did discuss this. We changed when we were going to record so that we can include Werner's keynote. Like we did the whole thing. Yeah,
I know.
It's
no, that's my fault.
I did not pre-check the honorable mentions, but Reinvent announcement for Clippy Mascot did not happen. Sorry, Jonathan.
Mm-hmm. I think Q is a Clippy.
Well, it's mascot.
If they would have called it Quippy, I would have given you that point.
Mm-hmm. Quippy, yeah.
We did not get to Astrobot upgrade or Astrobot Wars. Sorry. Extra effort, hardware, and energy usage. We got. I mean, I give you that one, Jonathan. It's sort of there.
Did we?
I don't know.
I don't understand that one out of context.
I don't know where it was. The context. I'll go back to the page. I am permissions reducer for Matt. Yeah, I think that one's definitely there. Security guard duty SOC AI. I missed that. I did not get DuckDB. I did not get AI for OpenSearch. Werner did not give me a masterclass on AI, and Jonathan did not get simulated worlds. That actually was surprising. There was no SimWeaver anything. That was
not surprised.
Nothing. Yeah, no, that was shocked. The closest was the NVIDIA CEO mentioning it as part of his guest spot.
Interestingly, they are hiring people.
Well, the problem is SimWeaver, none of the Wall Street analysts understand what that is. So there's no reason to talk about it on main stage because no one gets it. So
yeah,
there's a couple of open recs for people who work in silicon design and stuff like that. So I was like, that may be a thing this year, but no, they're still using Intel's Foundry, I think. So it'll come. We can't keep all our eggs in Intel and TSMC's basket for much longer.
Yeah. Well, Matt, congratulations. Very proud of your first attempt. That was very close. Feel challenged, which I appreciate.
All the shots we take at Justin are coming your way next year.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I don't want them. I'm good. Justin wins.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. We'll be back for Google Next with the next prediction show. So see you.
Oh, yeah.
See you later.
You all have the advantage there.
You would think so. It's not. Trust me.
Yeah. It's the best we've ever done at AWS predictions, and we're not. Yes. It's
all of us don't use AWS.
Later, guys.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.
Later.
And that is the Week in Cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Foghorn Consulting.
Subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, and tweet us your feedback at #TheCloudPod. Or join our Slack channel. Go to our website, thecloudpod.net, for sign-up instructions.